So, emotional responses. Um, I think it was when we were talking on Sunday about how to, what topics we wanted to cover. Um, I honestly do not remember. Was it you who came up with this one?
Which one?
The tonight's topic, emotional responses.
Yes. We talked pretty in depth about all the different situations that they happen and how to deal with that, even from a martial point of view. And we talked a lot about that.
So, so I just wanted to make sure that that credit was given where it was due. This one was Morwell's idea, and we all just thought it was a really great one.
Thank you.
So, because there are, as you said, a lot of sides to this. There's the fighter side. There's also the martial side. There's how no matter how angry you are, how do you treat your martial? That's there to help you. No matter how angry you are, how do you treat the other person if an incident happened? If an incident didn't happen and you're just really hot and dehydrated and you're suddenly not responding to things the way you know you should or would otherwise, how do you manage yourself? Do you notice your own triggers? And how do you mitigate that? So I'm going to open this up to anyone who wants to say anything. Don't all talk at once.
Maybe also how, as a marshal, you deal with people that are having emotional breakdowns.
Yes, that too. Absolutely, that too.
And it's not just emotional breakdown. This is a topic that I saw that was brought up, I believe, in one of Illador Zoom meetings. Mm-hmm. And it talked about the differences between like a adrenaline drop, if I had that correct.
Red dump.
Dump, thank you. And like, there are certain biological things that happen, and what is and not appropriate, but a helpful way, or I'm running out of words. I'm sorry, but if you're caught in that situation, how do you not make it worse? How can you be helpful?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
So how to find like a constructive approach
on either side of it, whether you see someone else getting emotional or whether it's your own emotions.
Right. So I can actually speak a little bit to that as someone who adrenaline dumps. I've gotten a lot better with it, but when I first started fencing, especially with melee, when I would come off the field, I was going to cry. It was just going to happen. And one marshal handled it flawlessly, in my opinion. And I wish I knew who it was. It was at Penzic, and they weren't from our kingdom, so I don't actually know their name. But I am just completely losing it, red-faced crying. They come over, they go, is it a medic issue or a martial issue? And I say no, and they say, okay, go get some water. And I just thought that was they gave me a yes or no, medic or martial, and just to make sure that no one had done anything stupid and I wasn't hurt.
Something that I do with some of my people that's usually worked pretty good for us. Not sure if you guys can hear me.
Yeah.
A little soft.
First question is never what's wrong. The first question is always, what do you need? Because that sometimes, even just that question of taking the approach away from it being wrong, it sometimes snaps the brain into oh shit, 1 second, what do I need? Okay, water. And it helps pump the brakes enough to let logic and cognitive functions start to reset enough. And then you get water into someone, get them sitting down, and then you can figure out the long way of doing it.
Yeah, the other question that seems innocent but is often a problem is the are you okay? Because it's too big of a question, and it is not necessarily the right answer, because obviously the person is not okay in some way. I love what Eleanor said, because that's a great way of saying it is is that, do you need immediate attention from a marshal or a medical person? Because, because are you okay is a hard question. Because again, their person is clearly not okay, but they may not need anything other than to step away.
And it's societally loaded already. Are you okay?
No, like
yes or no's are easier.
Yeah,
Right.
there's no way to avoid the question when you have "Are you okay?" or anything that involves thought beyond, like, do you need something? And if you just don't respond at that point and walk away, that pretty much answers the question on its own. If that's all you need is space,
Right,
and it doesn't become emotional at that point. Sorry.
I didn't mean to cut you up. And it's also, let's face it, anytime you see something like, hey, how are you doing? All my responses, I'm doing great, I'm doing fine. Because we're never going to actually say we're not doing okay unless you actually know that person or trust that person, because you feel like you can actually be honest with that person. And with the marshals, sometimes we know them, sometimes we don't. So our first reaction, at least mine, is to just say, I'm fine. And then I just either walk away or I put on a brave face and go back into it thinking that I really am fine, I can do this, when really I just need to take a step back and get out of the situation.
I'm trying to unmute you guys, and it's not. Are you muting yourselves as I'm trying to unmute you? There you go.
Wait, why? Sorry.
Did you mute me through all that?
Yeah. No, I heard you. I saw
Okay.
Thomas was trying to talk, and I was like, I can't.
Oh, we were talking to Clark. Sorry.
Yeah, Clark had walked in.
Is he right behind the screen? Because
He was, but now he's down in the basement, probably getting more wine.
okay, but you had tried to talk before.
I did. I was going to say that one of the last times that I had marshaled at Penzic, like a long time ago, I used to be very guilty of the like, "Are you okay?" And yeah, I eventually learned that I formed it in like a multiple choice of 4, which was medic, marshal, water bearer, or sitting down, and sort of letting it go from there, because I found that like too few questions was, sometimes rough, and that anything more than about 4 becomes way too stupid complicated, especially if it's marshaling for somebody who you have no idea who it is, because there will never be a 100% always correct way to handle a thing. You're just going to have to kind of get the idea that you can form the perfect response, like, gone, because it doesn't exist. But you can try and mitigate some of it.
And there are decidedly wrong ways to handle it, even if
Yeah.
there are not decidedly right ways. And the best, I will never forget, we were at some practice, I got jacked. It was an accident, I got jacked. And Donovan just looks at me, he gives me that Donovan look. He goes, you good? And I went, "No." And that was it. He just walked away. I'm like, cool. Because he knew you're good was going to be okay with me, or like, I'm not good. And I think I actually found him shortly thereafter and was like, can I just cry in your presence for a little while? And he said, yeah, that's cool. Sit down. And that was what I needed. I just needed like a friendly person that I could just like ugly cry for no reason. Because it wasn't that it hurt. It was like, it was a lot. It was, honestly, it was my response to getting jacked that I was really embarrassed about. Because I believe I screamed motherfucker at the top of my lungs.
But
and I was just like, everybody just heard me at Kenrick, and everyone just heard me scream motherfucker at Kenrick. And I just needed to get all of that emotional bullshit out of my head.
I mean,
but not sitting by myself crying.
that's some of it is the allowing someone to be not necessarily angry or harmful, but allowing someone to be upset a little bit and cry and not try to fix, like, oh, and excuse me while I bring up stereotypes, but the stereotype is a woman crying and suddenly things have, you have to fix it. And for anybody who's crying, it's not like there's not necessarily anything to fix. And sometimes just being there to say, okay, is the right answer. And not
there.
embarrassing them. I mean, that's the thing that gets to me when I cry, is that I I get embarrassed that I'm crying, and I'm embarrassed at the emotions that I have that are pouring out. And if the person who is with me accepts them as not shameful, but as a part of being a human, then it makes it easier for me to be in that place and get out of it. Because when when you're full of all that shame, it just everything just builds and it spirals and stuff like that. So sometimes just having someone be there and be okay with whatever is going on with you is helpful.
Yeah, permitting you to just feel your emotions without trying to make it a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and like even sometimes that helpful response is not as helpful. You know, I know we've gotten away from the melee, but like, you know, there was a K&Q
We don't have to.
That's fine. There was a K&Q where, you know, I was completely a wreck, and everybody was trying to be very helpful, and I felt very like I belong and people like want to help me, but like I was glad and I felt like loved, but it was not what I needed. Like I eventually just had to walk out of the room because people just kept coming, and again, it was all with very good intentions, but like, you know, really, really think about when you approach someone, you know, what's going on.
Are they overwhelming you?
And that's
yeah.
I was gonna say, like, I was one of those people that approached Maggie. Like, it's just one of my locals. Like, she seems upset. I want to check. But it's one of those things, like, you don't know if anyone's checked in first. So then what happens is, like, what happens to Magdalena? You got, like, 50 people checking.
Yeah, there was about, like, half a dozen people, which was just, like, you know, no one person did anything wrong, but it was just so many people that was just, like, okay, I'm glad people like me, but...
And I think, like, ideally, like, one person checking in is fine, but, like, you don't know, and you just, so then what happens? You get, like, what happens there, like, a whole bunch of people checking. I'm not sure the best way of handling I don't know if anyone's checked in on this person yet or not.
I mean, see if there's someone else who is already around that person and go, do you need anything? Do they need anything? Especially if there's like especially if there's an injury involved, but like, you know, when it's emotions, I think that you're going to see someone with them, and you can ask that person. And if there's no one with them, I honestly think that like Donovan's was really great. He didn't even get near me. It was just, you know, and so it wasn't like, are you okay? Is everything okay? Can I do anything for you? Can I get anything for you? Do you need to cry on my shoulder? Do you need water? Do you need me to kill somebody? Like,
yeah, there was a lot of that. I mean, it wasn't quite that overwhelming, like, but yeah, that's kind of what it felt like.
Somebody recently posted an article about ask culture versus guess culture.
I saw that. Yeah.
And I think it's very relevant to this
that's
discussion.
really good.
Actually, yeah, I've seen that.
And I was thinking about that because, like, I grew up in the Midwest, and I am very much brought up in that, like, guess culture where you try to fix things before you even hear it's a problem, because that's what you do. Like, to the point where I was dating a girl once, and she, like, tripped over a curb, and she was having that, like, adrenal response of crying. She sat down, and she just wanted to, like, get over it. But in my mind, like, I had to do something to fix it. So, like, I went to the car, got, like, a stick or a sword or something, and just hit the curb a couple of times with the sword in front of her. And was like, fuck you, curb. And, like, not everybody's going to appreciate that response. But, like, that is sort of the way that I have always been wired, of, like, even if it's not crying, even if it is just somebody, like, upset a little, like, you know, if you come off the field and you're like, fuck, I will still, like, intrinsically want to go, what do we have to break? What's wrong? Can I fix it? Is it fixable? Like, and that article about the guess and ask culture really made me try to start examining more of how and why I do some of the things I do, especially the things that I used to do that I definitely don't think are good to continue doing.
Could someone put that link on our page or something? Because I'd love to read that article.
Oh yeah, if we can put that in the chat, that would be great. I don't have it ready, but
I'll find it. I just want to say for a second on something Meredith said, the kind of give it a couple beats. That works really well in my experience too for anger, because we talk about crying a lot, but anger is another response, especially in a game that is fundamentally based on the honor system. You're going to get people who disagree on what just happened, and therefore are really mad at the situation. And let's be honest, we're all friends here, and the running up to someone who's steaming at the ears and going, "Are you okay? What can I do?" is probably not going to get you a very productive response. So I remember last Penzic, gosh, I think it was Sorsha who did it. I had just taken a really dirty shot, and I was furious. Like, I was gloves on the ground, mask on the ground, back in the tent, and just like by the time I got the gorget off, she walks up to me and goes, "Water? Yep. Have you told the marshal yet? Nope. Gonna go get one." And just giving me that 30 seconds to blow off all the steam before she tried to get involved really kept me from blowing up at someone who I really wasn't mad at.
So let's turn this around a little bit, because we talk about how to respond to someone else's emotions a lot. If you're in that place and someone does ask you, "You okay?" or someone is trying, like, how can you help yourself in that situation to advocate without being, without harming other people in any way, without making things for your own self-worth worse, not worth. How can you make them, how can you advocate for yourself in a productive way that is actually going to help you if you are the person who is upset? So, like, for me, I had to think about that topic a bunch once I was introduced to the concept of, you cry because your adrenaline crashed. Oh, I did? I thought it was just because, like, I'm like, I don't know, weak. Like, I don't know. I thought it was because I was frustrated and I was just handling it badly. I was handling it wrong. I was being selfish. I was being a baby. I was being silly. I was like, whatever the thing was, it wasn't until, and I remember it was Sorsha. I remember exactly where I was when she was like, "That's an adrenaline response. And you got to stop feeling bad about it." I'm like, "What do you mean it's an adrenaline response?" And she went through like the whole like chemistry of it. And I was like, mind blown. But even then, I can know I'm having an adrenaline response. But since I heard that, I've been thinking about it. And I'm like, okay, so if I start crying, and people do start coming over to me and be like, "You okay? You okay?" I know I could be like, "It's an adrenaline response. I'm okay. I just need a few minutes." And that's my way of just getting people away from me, but also educating them in the process about, don't do this. So does anyone have anything that works for them to keep that crowd of, "Oh my God, are you okay?" from happening?
I think if you take a couple of deep breaths yourself to kind of give yourself a chance to calm down, and also the body language, putting your hand out there to stop them coming any closer. Making the timeout sign, anything like that, I think, because you may not be ready to actually talk to people.
Yeah, I've gotten to the point where, like, and for me, if it's at practice, a lot of it's I just got hit with a shot and I don't know if I'm hurt. I don't know if it just hit that button that made the tears happen. I don't know if it's adrenaline. I don't know if I just had a really bad day and this was the thing. And asking for that, let me think about it to tell you whether that was a bad shot or if it's just me taking it weird. And asking for that time to go outside for a minute or sit down and process it and then come back and say, "Yeah, my head still hurts. That was a bit of a stiff shot," or "No, it wasn't you. I'm just in a weird place in my head. Don't worry about it. I'm okay. But I need to get to a place where those words and that thought process can happen."
My go-to response once I know I'm not hurt is, "I'm just leaking." It makes people giggle, And for some reason, as soon as I say that, they realize I'm not in any danger or pain. And for some reason, the people associate it with an involuntary reaction.
Yeah,
That
I've
makes
said
sense.
the same thing because I'm a crier. I understand that about myself.
Mhm.
And it's taken a lot for me to not be completely humiliated by it. And so what I've done over the years is try to figure out what my triggers are. You know, I've got I will have the adrenaline dump. I will have the frustration cry. I have a very weird trigger where if you compliment me, I will break out crying. I did this to Leodin not long ago, where she complimented me and I just started crying. It's just what I do. It's just leaking. I'm okay.
I think I might have gotten that from you, actually.
Yeah. But it's something that I don't know if I want it at this age. I'm not going to be able to fix it. So the best I can do is just not be humiliated by it anymore.
I mean,
Sorry, go ahead.
I
I was just going to say normalizing it in this way by talking about it.
Yeah.
It helps me with the embarrassment because I'm the same way. You know,
yes, absolutely. I find I have two very different responses. One is the crying response. I mean, I cry at everything. I cry on the field. I cry at a TV commercial. I cry at everything. And so like that one I think is harder to see coming on. You know, it's some of it is just about managing your adrenaline, managing your, you know, blood sugars, food intake, sleep, which especially like at Penzic is sometimes hard to do. And I find, you know, because it is a dump, that it does happen often very, very quickly. And so you have to kind of manage that one. The other response that I have, that I know a lot of other people have, this one kind of ramps up a little bit, but I will notice that all of a sudden I'm shouting expletives all the time. I think some of you have definitely seen this. Maybe. And like, so, you know, especially like, you know, you're in the middle of a melee and just like every shot, you're just like, pardon my language, you know, you're just like, fuck that shot, fuck that guy, like just constantly. And being able to see that like, that potentially is going to lead to more anger, more things coming on, and that, you know, maybe you need to step out for a minute, maybe you need to, you know, get a drink before you explode at someone. Because and we've all done it. It's really easy to be like, that guy hit me so hard, and just, you know, like get really angry and get, you know, just let it simmer and just let it get worse and worse and worse. And, you know, that other person might be having a bad day, or maybe they really are, you know, somebody who hits hard, but most of the time they're in the same spot as you and they're just, you know, tired and, you know, pumped up, and being able to walk away and try to think about like, why do I feel this way? Is this person really hitting hard? Do I need to report them to a marshal, or am I just a little ramped up and I need to sit down, get some water, figure out, do I need food? Do I need to sit?
Also, marshals,
did I get enough sleep?
Marshals are not immune from this. The Penzic that we refer to as Dick in a Box, I was marshaling, and I had been having...
I'm seeing some people go, what? So you might need to explain after. Continue, you were
marshaling. Finish your story, then we can explain.
But yes, I had to take myself off the field, and I was marshaling because I had watched somebody ignore like 7 or 8 shots in a row, and instead of calmly pulling them off to the side, I'm pretty sure I just pointed at them with a marshal stick and said, "You fucko, you're done, sit down." And things went downhill from there, and I didn't help that any. But yeah, this is not just solely a combatant issue, because sometimes you watch things happen and at Penzic especially, once you add heat and people doing stupid things, tempers flare even if it's not rational or reasonable. So I'm also still working on ways to have better responses for some of that, because I'm thinking that I don't know that I have necessarily any better tools in my tools box for that. But no, there was a year, the dick in a box thing was from a year where we were given a bunch of hay bales to make a whole bunch of like structures or whatever we wanted to do.
It was Penzic 40.
Yep. And one team made a very big box with only one point of entry. So.
And
yeah.
the other
We had Lucan throw out one hay
Freezy
bale,
Pops.
and we ate Freezy Pops.
Yeah, I didn't live in the East yet for that, so.
All tantrums happened.
Yeah.
But going back there, I'm noticing that we're hearing from a lot, like this conversation has been heavily discussed among female fighters and with a female fighter centric focus, which is great. But this conversation has happened a lot among women, and how to and in groups where we're trying to figure out how to better include and engage and be supportive of women in fighting. But I also want to ask, because I noticed that none of the men have really said anything about their own, other than Thomas, about their own emotional responses. So like, what are your emotional responses on the field? How do you deal with it? Remy, go ahead.
Yeah, so there was only one point where I think I came close to like that adrenaline dump that we're talking about earlier. With my first time getting to the final four of K and Q, and I just lost to Loophole. So now I see one of my best friends Loophole fighting one of my other best friends Malocchio in the finals, and like I was just, because I got that far, it was the first time, there was a lot of adrenaline, and now I failed at my goal, but I'm seeing two of my friends about to win and stuff. So that is a lot of conflicting emotion. I didn't quite get the tears, but that might have been because I was just dehydrated at that point of the day. But I definitely felt like that, just like conflicting emotions, and just like I needed to just walk away for a little bit and just kind of like walk outside, get some cold fresh air, get a little bit of water, and just kind of like detach from the event for a little while, and then come back later. That's the only time that I've really run into that, and I'm not sure if that's because of how my body handles adrenaline typically, or just because I've been playing sports since I was 5, that my body has kind of gotten used to how to handle adrenaline in a slightly different way. Because that's one thing, just like we don't talk a lot about, is just having an athlete background, as it were. If we're looking at D&D characters, that gives you a lot of bonuses and stuff. But I think some of it can also play into how to handle emotions or adrenaline and other feelings and biochemical kind of stuff. I have gotten a little snappy at people, specifically in melee. Like I got double tapped in the back of the head in the castle once. So I honestly, I turned around and snapped at the dude. He like started to apologize. I took a deep breath and I apologized for snapping at him and stuff. But there definitely needs to have like a conscious, for me at that anyways, I need to have that conscious choice of like, all right, continuing the escalation is not gonna help anything. The guy is just gonna shut down if I can keep yelling at him. And it's just better off for me anyways if I try to take the high road, even if I'm not in the wrong at all. It'll give me a little bit of a stronger standing point. But again, I realize that's not always easy to do, especially when there's a lot of strong emotions involved and a lot of extra factors like sleep, water, calories, and stuff like that.
Right.
Sorry. Oh, sorry. Who?
That was me.
Oh, was
that was
you?
me.
Sorry.
Yes. So for me, I definitely have thrown a mask or two, especially when I know I stabbed that person 5 times and they're still standing there. That's the number one way to drive me up a wall. And I have learned actually through parenting classes and avoiding escalation with the children, a couple of tools to check in with myself as to where I'm at before I engage. Because You know, when you're angry and you have a sword in your hand and that effer over there is pissing you off, it's really, you know, you have to maintain control and not escalate the situation more. So it's a matter of first checking myself, why am I mad? Am I mad because I didn't hit him, or am I mad because he was just blowing it off? If he's just blowing it off, that's on him, you know, and do that self-talk of, I know what I'm doing. If they're not acknowledging it, that's not my problem. I'm here to fight my fight. I'm here to do my thing as best I can. And if I think it's, you know, more than just me, then bring it to a marshal. But I have to do that and conscious stop myself, you know, after throwing a couple of things and taking a breath. I'm big into the deep breathing. It always helps me. Take a breath and then think, what is really the trigger? Am I really mad at this person? Am I just mad at inaction? Okay, time to let that go. Am I mad at that person for some reason? Maybe I shouldn't be fighting them. Because, you know, they've pissed me off. I need to find someone else to fight. Find another part of the line to move to. And just work through the anger from an intellectual point to kind of break it apart once you first have that outlet, that burst, and then, okay, I'm going to let that go because anger is not something you should be feeling on the list field. If you're angry, you need to go off until you're not, because you don't want to hurt somebody. If nothing else, orange is not my color. You know, I much prefer to be in blue. So that's my thoughts.
Lauren?
Coming at this from a different perspective, so with some of the mental health troubles I have, there are times that if I get gacked, I can't rationalize because it'll send me into a full-blown panic attack, and I can't words. So I'll be on the field, I'll be off the side of the field, and I can't form sentences. So what I've got is some people in my group, my wife, some other close friends that know how to guide me through the chaos. So sometimes the most I can get out of my head is find Vanessa, find Sarah, something like that. And they know how to read me well enough to be able to guide me through to get me back to rational. And that's something I've had to implement over the last couple of years, because there's certain times I can't navigate it on my own. I need the support crew. And this is also why usually in my bag, I have headphones, because if I can't dial it out, I will go off the field, put my headphones in, and I've got certain tracks that I'll put on that'll calm me down.
Did someone else?
Jordan had his hand up.
Jordan, go.
So this may be more of a generational thing as well as male, female, I don't know. But I was long ago shamed out of crying or expressing my emotions on any athletic field. Back when I was 8, 9, and 10 in Little League, you know, I was told in no unexplicit terms that, in very explicit terms, that was not acceptable. So I pretty much just internalize it. But my best trick for dealing with it is if somebody hits me hard or sugs off a shot, I try to remember the last time I think I may have blown off, accidentally missed a shot or hit somebody too hard. At Penzic 15 plus years ago, I was aiming at one gentleman and this lady stepped in between and I hammered her so hard that I immediately left the field, and she came over and yelled at me for 5 minutes, and I probably deserved it. But so I just try to remember when I did the same thing and say, you know, we've all been there. You know, don't read anything more into it than it is. You know, but like I say, as I say, generation and gender issues in treating these things are entirely different. Everybody's different. There is no one thing that's going to work for everybody.
That's true. Did I see someone else, or are people just waving there? Domenico.
Hello. So I know for
Good to see your
myself.
face.
Hi. I know for myself, it's usually okay. I'm upset. Let me remove myself and just take the moment off the field. And it's not just remove myself from the field. It's remove myself where I'll put the sword down, the helmet, mask comes off, gloves come off for a few moments just to give myself a breather to go, okay, that sucked. Let me kind of, okay, take the moment, process it. What do I need? And then kind of, okay, am I good? Do I need to get my water? Like I'll need water, get some water, and say, okay, am I good to get back in? Am I good? Everything feels good. And then I'll just try to get back in when I'm ready. Or if it's something in particular that did irk me, I'll blow the steam off at the edge where I guess after the res point to get myself, get it out, and then try to just get back in. And it's usually just getting it out or just taking the breather is usually what I need. And just to kind of put it down, just put it all down as much as possible till I can pick it up, which is usually like 3 minutes or so.
Morwell, did you have something?
What I was thinking was just, again, going back to what Eleanor said about, the marshal she had that did a really good job of, if you come up on somebody who is looking like you're having emotional response, limit the questions. Also what Thomas said, and that is, like nothing more than 4, but just very yes or no, marshal, yes or no, medic, yes or no, food, yes or no, and sometimes like male or female, sometimes you can just get that, hopefully that person just to be able to focus on the question and bring them down off of that response. I don't know. Because being a marshal, I don't want to make it worse. Or being a friend or knowing somebody, if I saw anyone on this panel who was having an emotional response, I don't want to make it worse.
So I actually, I think it's interesting, and I see you, Tasha. Just wanted to, what I'm noticing that I find really interesting is that when you see someone, when you see a woman getting upset or crying, people tend to want to go, "Are you okay? How can I help you?" Blah blah blah. If you see and I'm talking in broad generalities about stereotypical responses, right? When you see a man getting angry, the answer is always, "Let him blow it off. Let him walk it off. When he comes back, he'll be fine." And it's just interesting to me to hear us talking about our different responses to things and knowing that that's actually a thing that will happen, because I've said it. He's fine. He just needs to walk it off. We just need to let him process it, versus she's crying. We should make sure she's okay. But I think it's also, if someone's crying, it's way more likely, it's way more of a possibility that they're actually hurt than if you see someone being angry. It's not generally speaking that someone is angry and needs medical attention.
I disagree.
Generally.
Maybe.
But you certainly don't want to, while they're angry, go over to them and be like, do you need medical attention? Because if they're that angry, like, what are they going to do? Maybe as a martial culture, we need to think about that as well, and do the same, you good, or whatever it is, when we see people throwing masks as well, and not just go, calm down, dude, calm down. Maybe incorporating the same language would be helpful to everyone's emotional response. Maybe it won't, I don't know. But I know for me, when I'm angry, that would actually be fine for me as well. You good? No, I'm fucking pissed.
I was going to say, you can have both. I got completely furious at a Balfours where I got a pretty bad concussion, and I probably needed medical attention, but instead I was furious.
Yeah.
And it would be great if, when I started crying, somebody would say, just let her walk it off.
Yeah.
That would be fantastic. Instead of what I usually get is people in my face saying, "Are you okay? Are you upset?
Yeah.
Are you?" Yeah.
Yeah. The quick assessment is there a real injury here? And again, look, I think walk it off is probably what I want to do most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Also, so.
I have done that problem.
Sorry, actually, Tasha wanted to say.
So one of the things that we had touched on earlier was about how sometimes when you're upset, there's that whole, we must check on them as a group in platoon strength.
Yeah.
And no, do not do that. It would be really nice if there was like one person who would check on you and then sort of hang out, maybe not really paying attention, but keeping other people from swarming you. Because I got hurt at work and that happened to me and I ended up snapping at somebody I probably shouldn't have snapped at. I got in trouble for getting hurt because people got all up in my grill and wouldn't leave me alone to process my injury, which turned out not to be so bad, but still. I just needed to assess myself for a minute, and nobody would give me 10 seconds to just breathe and do the head to toe check. So.
And that can make it worse. Eleanor raised hand?
Yeah.
It's Kieran, actually.
Or Kieran?
I had this problem last year, or last Pensic. I had one, it was a pair of mods who were disagreeing over something, and one was just so angry that he was threatening to take this off the field to settle things. And it was just like, and not gonna name names, but he's like 6 foot something, big guy. And I'm just like, I'm really glad I have a stick right now, but just, it was like, is he blowing off steam or is he actually getting ready to deck him?
Yeah.
I'm just glad I'm not 6 foot tall.
Neither were mods of the East.
Mirren?
I think for me, a lot of it can sometimes come down to whether something can actually be done about the problem. So like if it's not an injury and it's not something that you can say that guy specifically that I can identify as the one who caused an issue. Because sometimes you just get jacked and you don't know who did it, and going to a marshal isn't going to solve the problem. Sometimes it just comes down to, can something be done? If yes, figure out how to communicate that. If no, I need to walk away and deal with my own brain. Because if I can't get over it, then my safest and best option is to not go on the field where I'm no longer having fun because I'm stuck in this loop of I just feel miserable. And a lot of those check-ins of too many people and how many times over and over and over are we going to check on each other comes down to there is nothing that anyone else can do about this situation. It's all in my head at this point. And because we're so helpful as a society, we want to fix all the problems. But sometimes just acknowledging that it's my own brain pan and I'm gonna have to deal with it because you standing there won't make me feel any less upset about how the field just went.
So you
And
just
that's okay.
reminded, oh, sorry.
Nope, go ahead, I'm done.
You just reminded me of something that I think was important that I had forgotten, which is the whole idea that people with the whole, walk off, like remove yourself from the situation, other things. I found that also led me to get frustrated later because when somebody was an issue and it needed to be brought to a marshal, I couldn't remember who the fuck it was after that. But I had to spontaneously develop the sort of mindset at a Gulf Wars once to like realize I'm angry, pause, this guy did a thing, and basically tell a marshal immediately, point out the person, then remove myself and go off. And trying to kind of short circuit that whole like, yes, I'm angry, because it's not easy, and I had to do it like 3 times at that Gulf Wars. And I ended up apologizing to the marshal afterwards because I didn't handle it gracefully the first few times, and I like to think I'm doing a little bit better about it when it does come up more, because I've realized I do still do that now. It's like if I get hurt or I see someone get hurt or I see something, I try to immediately be like, this person did X, Y, or Z, and then like go off to the side or do something else and remove myself from it before I make it worse. And I think that that's something that we might actually need to address as a culture more about, like when people are doing things that they need to be called out on, like unsafe things, we need to actually try and help people be able to identify that problem instead of just, well, it is lost to the sands of time forever and we're not going to do anything about it, even though, for the most part, a bunch of us can come up with a short list of like, oh, you were over there, there's like these 5 or 6 people. I'm pretty sure if I did a lineup, like somebody could point it out, but nobody wants to do that. And I get why, but being able to do that also helps the martial culture as well as the fighting culture, because problems are problems and they need solved everywhere.
Remy, you had your.
Yeah. So this is really kind of directed more to the men listening and stuff. Just in terms of, like, we need to be careful when we get angry on the field and how we project that. Because yes, men, we need to be better at expressing emotions, but we got to make sure it's productive and not destructive. And the one thing, if like we get angry, especially if we're like Karen was saying, like a 6-foot+ dude getting upset and be like, let's take this into the parking lot or whatever. That is a threat, and that can make a lot of people uncomfortable, especially for going off statistics, women who are more likely to have experienced some kind of physical abuse or emotional abuse and stuff. So like, it is fine, like if something goes wrong, it is fine to feel that emotion of like being upset, frustrated, or angry, as it were. But we just need to find better ways of handling that. That's not tossing the mask, like getting up in somebody's grill and face and yelling at somebody. Like, I understand someone swearing under their breath as they kind of walk off. I've done that. I'll like drop a bunch of F-bombs as I'm kind of walking off because that's how I can do it. But I'm trying to do it away from people. Well, I'm trying to ways it's not at anyone and not energy is not directed at people. But I've definitely seen a lot of people throw masks, and for me, that is try to choose my words properly and stuff. But like, it's kind of like one that can just like that kind of violent outburst isn't good, but it's also very unsportsmanlike as well. And that's being very generous, I think, as describing tossing the mask and stuff. So really, just like we need to, if we're feeling upset and stuff, we need to find ways of better expressing that. That's not going to make everyone else have to deal with our shit, basically.
No, kind of following up on what he said, I noticed that the majority of our conversations are like, oh, you know, what happens if you see somebody who looks like they might have been hurt or that they've been crying? And I kind of do the you good if I see somebody that's angry or crying. But I feel like the worst situation is really if I see somebody who's like throwing helmets and stuff, that is, they're like, oh, you know, let them walk it off. No, I mean, one, I feel like, cool, if that's how you're going to respond, I don't want to fight you. I don't feel safe around you. And I'm watching like 30 other people that are looking at this person effectively having a hissy fit. And I'm like, beyond being like unprofessional, I feel like that teeters on unsafe. And I feel like that needs to be addressed immediately. Even if I don't know if I should give them the time to walk it off. But at that point, it's like, I want to make sure that it looks like the situation is being addressed. And if I'm the marshal there, I'm going to address it. And I feel like the anger is the thing that we need to deal more with the tears thing. Like, I'm not even actually sure what would be addressed other than it's like, hey, you good? You know, and there's nothing worse than telling an angry person that you need to calm down, but that's probably what the default would be. Like, so how do we deal with the person that is having the rage fit on the sidelines? What is the correct way or the best way?
Like, so for me, like personally, I would say that the worst thing you can tell someone is calm down, but there are other ways to tell people to calm down without telling them to calm down, right? So like you can say, take a walk, you know, is fine from what I've seen. I've
Sorry.
I've had to deal with angry people before in my world, in my life, in myself.
What?
I know, crazy. So like, yeah, calm down is never going to be something that's going to be received well. But yeah, take a walk. What else? Do you need anything is still an okay question, I think, to someone who's just throwing their mask. Do you need anything? Should I pick this up for you? You know?
Maybe don't do that.
Yeah, stop throwing things.
Please don't throw things.
That would not help
it
me.
Wouldn't
So
help,
I
know.
I have thrown my mask. And it was not my best moment. And it was made doubly worse because I was Princess of the East at the time at Penzic, and I was jacked in the face, and I dented my mask a little bit, and I was pissed. So like I was also angry because that was the battle that that we refer to as the Battle of the Marshals won. If anyone remembers that one. So it was just at the end when they had called sudden death and no reses, and then I got jacked in the face, and I stomped off the field, threw my mask, took my gloves off, threw my gloves, and then stood there going, shouldn't have done that with a fucking princess. God damn it. And I was like, I was mad at myself for being angry, but I was so angry because I was so angry. And everyone pretty much left me alone, which was great. And then, and then the person who jacked me in the face found me and apologized. Turns out it was the Society Earl Marshal. So that was a fun moment. But in the meantime, like, yes, I was that person who threw my stuff. And if someone had said, Your Highness, you shouldn't be throwing your shit, I'd be like, go fuck yourself, because like, don't talk to me in that moment about the things I'm doing wrong, because I'm already aware I'm doing it wrong. And now I'm just embarrassed too. And so like, don't do that is probably not the best thing to say, at least to me. But I don't know. I mean, does anyone have any other thoughts or?
I think that works for you because you're really aware. I have seen the rage face on some people on the sidelines, and you can tell they're just not aware that people are watching them and concerned for their well-being. So
my typical go-to when I see situations like that is get some water and then we can talk. Because that interrupts the behavior, so they stop making a scene and throwing their shit. Water usually gives them a minute to cool down and calm down, and then as the marshal, they can tell me why they're all pissed off.
So I also know that I come from a place of like tremendous privilege in handling this with other dudes, but that's why I have sometimes used humor to like stop somebody and kind of short circuit that synapse. Like when somebody got upset once at a Kings and Queens, I turned a phrase that Brennan turned me on to kind of stop them from getting more pissed off, where I was like, hey, you just tiptoed over the line into too dicky from just dicky enough. And, that stopped what was going on and kind of turned it on its head. I've also done this with other people where I'm like, hey, you look pissed off. Do you want to like punch me or something? Will that make you feel better? Because I'm wearing armor. So like what? And usually it does take the steam out of like, it takes the wind out of their sails sometimes if you can undercut it. But not everybody is going to probably be comfortable doing that for various humans or shitty reasons.
I feel like.
Sorry.
One thing that like if I'm a marshal and someone's having like a more anger, violent, because sometimes it's hard to differentiate the two at a point. Outbursts is just kind of like stand at a distance between them and other people, and just kind of like give them a few moments to see if they're going to cool themselves off, and but still kind of be there as a physical shield should that situation arise. That it's never come to that. Most people will when they kind of just, if they turn around and kind of seeing you there with the black and yellow stick, kind of that's sometimes enough of a visual to kind of jostle them out of their own problems, which is kind of what Effingham does with his jokes, is just kind of jostle them out of that anger spiral and stuff like that. But I'll like physically be near them, but still at a distance so they have their space, but still be close by to jump it if need be, or once they calm down, go up to them and have that talk.
So I have kind of a question, I guess, for Effingham and anyone else who is more experienced with these situations, because I'm a fairly new marshal. As a smaller female person, would it be weird if something like this was happening at a melee, if I kind of went, hey, should we like talk to them? You want to help me talk to them?
That is absolutely not weird. I will admit that when people get angry and start throwing things, my first reaction is to protect myself, because I'll admit right here, I was an abused child. I was beaten black and blue as a kid. So my first reaction when somebody gets angry and starts throwing things is my heart gets this clenched feeling, and I don't want to deal with them. And then afterwards, I will judge them harshly. Especially if they continue to do it. I've seen people who will throw a mask across the field and then never do it again. But there are people who feel that it's their right to become exceptionally angry and continue to do it.
And yeah, even before I got my ogre, and a little bit after I got my ogre, there had been issues at Penzic where I asked for Rhea and Natalia to back me up on a thing, which seems, for some people thinking of sort of physical size and imposingness, you would think that I'd have that covered, but the amount of people who are still terrified of Rhea and Natalia is
Rightly
a thing,
so.
and it's well earned. But I absolutely went to them and was like, "Hey, I need backup for dealing with this thing in particular." So knowing when to grab somebody else is a great skill to have, and honestly, we should do more of that as a group.
Yeah, we should back each other up.
Absolutely. Okay, Sean, then Leodin.
Okay, so I was going to say that it really depends if the person is continuing to escalate once they're off the field with their angry outburst. If they just throw their mask and storm away and they're always coming down, let them calm down. If they throw their mask and then they flip over a table and start shouting, okay, now you've got to get involved. So you have to kind of watch, are they starting to escalate? Because it's okay to feel angry. It's okay to, have that initial, adrenal response, but then you need to, watch, okay, how is this going? How is this playing out? Because you throw the mask, that's not the best look, but it happens if you start to then process it to calm down. If you don't start to calm yourself down, then as a marshal, I will step over with my big marshal stick between you and me if I feel I need to, and make sure that that you need to start to chill out. That we can talk about whatever's bothering you, but if you are going to be screaming obscenities, I can't help you. If you're going to be breaking your stuff, you're not going to be able to play anymore. So you need to watch your response so we can process through whatever happened together. I can help you. I can be your friend. Or you can, break your stuff and, I'll kick you off my field. I don't care who you are. If that's how you're going to act, you need to go until you can, kill your friends peacefully. So it really, really matters after that initial outburst, what do they do? Because, there's times when I've talked myself up to being more and more angry. And sometimes you can't get out of that self-talk of, that mother effer, I can't believe you didn't, and you just keep getting angry and you're going to start hulking out. Okay, you need to step in if someone is doing that. But if they're, okay, through it, they're sitting, they're breathing, and they're just sitting, that's when you just let it go for a bit and then you step in. So it's always situational, but you really have to watch for, are they escalating or are they de-escalating? And, know people's general body language for the direction they're going in.
Leodin?
Sorry.
Hang on, hold on. Leodin's had her hand up for a while. Sorry.
So one of the things about anger situations, and especially as a person who can get very angry, I know this about myself, is you have to figure out what you can control. Because you can't control your emotions right now. You gotta let them do what they're gonna do. So what can you control in that situation? And the two things that I have sorted out, especially when you're thinking about a lot of the stuff we're talking about right now, is I can control my volume
and I can control my location. And if you are yelling and screaming in a place with a lot of people, you're making a bunch of people awkward. People aren't probably going to help you. And suddenly the entire room the tune of the room has changed. And you are now the focus of the room. And if you are having a bad reaction because you're now embarrassed because you're the focus of the room, that's going to spiral. So as a person, if I can control my volume and location, I can be quietly angry in a room full of people and be with people I trust. And if I can't be quietly angry, I need to change my location. And as a marshal, if I'm working with someone who is being very angry, very loud, and is in a bunch of people, I'm going to take that person. I'm like, all right, we're taking a walk. Because they may not be able to control their volume, but now I can control the location. And if we take a walk and we go outside or we go to another side of the field, and that at that point, it's just me and them, or it's just me and my friend, at that point you have changed what's going on and you have given a new control on the situation. So in all of this, if you take that beat and you realize the number of times I've gotten angry and immediately walked back to the EK tent, that's the worst decision I can make. Don't go there. Don't go to EK tent. And then I go and I walk up the hill, because then I have changed my location. I can still be loud. I can still be muttering, but I'm not around people. So it's just keep those two things in mind. Especially if you are angry or you see someone else who is angry and you're in an authority position. So that's what I wanted to say.
That's really, really good. That's a really good point too, because you're right. Sometimes, and I think that sometimes the take a walk thing that people end up doing when they're upset anyway, but not always. And that's good context around the sort of impetus to do that. Olan.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond a bit to what Sean said earlier, because I don't necessarily agree with the idea of letting them noticing the act and then letting them see what's the next step. Because once people start throwing their shit off, it can escalate very quickly into something that's very awkward and uncomfortable for everyone else around. I feel it would be better to just address it on the spot rather than wait and see, are they going to flip a table afterwards, or are they just going to calm down?
If I can respond, it really, really depends, because sometimes just throwing it and then you're done, and just that violent release of energy gets rid of the anger for you, at least a little bit. Other times, where okay, I thought I'm still mad, and you don't have to sit and watch them and wait 10 minutes so it happens, but just look at their face. Do they go from to, do they look like they know that what they just did was wrong? Read their body language. Are they continuing to shout, or did they shout and now they're taking a deep breath? And watching, that, moment, because you don't want people to feel, just like it's okay to cry, it's okay to get mad. It's not okay to throw a full-on temper tantrum, but if you throw your mask on the ground, it's your mask. Again, it may not be the best look you've ever had, but it's not the end of the world. And if a mask is thrown and suddenly there's 5 marshals, now you've made the situation worse, where people are going to feel like it's not okay to express that either. And they need to be okay, and for me, if I throw something, most of the time I'm done. And just that physical action releases that emotion for me, and now I can start to process back down into my baseline. I can get back to where I'm going to be able to enjoy the rest of the event. I'm going to be able to have fun. Whereas, if I throw my mask and now I'm getting written up by a marshal and I've got, 17 people around me, now there's no way I'm calming down, and I'm just going to, even if I had a legitimate complaint or not, it's going to be lost in the shouting that ensues. Versus you give me that time after, because I'm not escalating things, you give me that time, I can calm down. I can then, you can either you seek me out because you saw that I did that and you're like, hey, that's not cool. After the fact, okay. And I can explain, this is what happened. This is why I was upset. I needed to, and, it might be, that was my bad, or, hey, this person needs to be addressed because they're not taking shots, or, they jacked me, and I don't need, 3 steps to the crotch before I fall down. That's not cool, man. Whatever the case might have been. Not that's ever happened. That's just a random example. But so it's not, just sit back and wait passively and, let it go for an extended period of time, but give people that couple of beats and watch their posture. People will tell you without saying anything how they're feeling a lot more than they can tell you how they're feeling in that moment. Are their hands clenched in balls of rage, or have they relaxed that? That kind of thing. You watch that, and then as a marshal decide how are you going to handle the situation next. Versus if it's instantly, you throw a mask, I'm going to jump on you so you don't escalate it, you could cause de-escalation inadvertently. Give people that moment to self-regulate before you decide they can't.
I kind of lost a little bit of track here. Did I see Mercedes?
Yeah. So there's a difference between somebody who throws their mask once and then steps back and says, this was a trigger for me. I need to look at this in the future. And somebody who regularly becomes very angry on the field. We've all seen people like this. That makes the whole situation very unsafe for people. Like I said earlier, there are times that I feel very unsafe. If we want to keep newer fencers from looking at us and going, well, this guy, I've seen this guy, over the course of 5 years, I've seen him throw his mask 3 or 4 times. So this is a normal thing for him, and nobody ever says anything. I don't think that's very safe. We can't let this go. Getting angry and having people step back and say, well, that's just, that's the way he is. No, you throw your mask, I expect you to be talked to. Maybe not at that very second, the first time, but maybe the 3rd or 4th time. Yeah. I want to see somebody step up and say, and I'll even do it if I have to. I will say, look, I've watched you do this time and time again. It's not acceptable because even though we're out there stabbing each other, this needs to be a safe space. This needs to be a place where people don't feel like they're in actual danger.
So I guess I knew we would circle back to what I was going to eventually comment on earlier. So I was like, I think like throwing hard shots, I think there needs to be some kind of system or accountability. Is it, everybody will throw a hard shot from time to time. Everybody will have an emotional outburst, whether in different various forms from time to time. We have methods in place in theory to keep track of the people that are constantly throwing those hard shots. Maybe they're not used as much as they should be. I mean, I'm not sure what there is for people that are, and I'm not talking about a bad day because, you may have multiple things on a bad day because you didn't sleep or, something is going on in the outside world and that happens. But if this is a constant problem that recurs again and again, what do we do with these people? Especially if it's something that's making other people feel unsafe.
Would that be a, I think that would then become a marshalate issue, right? I mean, it would have to, like, that's not something that we can handle on our own at that point. If it's a systemic, if it's a pattern of behavior, and they've been talked to, it has to go to the marshals, I would think.
Also, it should be documented, because if there is going to be any action taken, you have to set up that this is a pattern of behavior.
Jordan,
Yeah,
you?
Okay.
Sorry, Lee. Okay, Leland, go ahead.
Okay. No, what I was gonna say is I don't think that's something that, I mean, I just thinking for myself, I don't even think that's something I would have in the past considered going to the marshals for, is because it doesn't happen on the field, even though it is a field thing. You know, the way this person reacts to things on the field makes me feel unsafe. But that is a field thing, that is a marshal thing, and I think that's something that, you know, you don't see this because you're on the field, but off the field, this is something that needs to be addressed because it's making everyone around uncomfortable, and that's a problem.
Yeah. I think, Jordan, go ahead.
I would differentiate a little bit between somebody that gets angry on the field and then somebody that storms off the field and then throws his mask into, or her mask into their tent and screams a few obscenities and maybe takes 10 minutes to calm down. As long as they're not a threat to anybody else, you know, we may not feel comfortable about the way they express their anger, but some leeway has to be given. People crying make me uncomfortable, but I've learned to try not to express that. People being angry make me uncomfortable, and I need to learn to not react to that. But if they seem to be a threat or potentially a threat to somebody else, we definitely need to step in. And there's a big difference between somebody that's really mad at themselves because they did something stupid on the field and maybe lost something important to them, and they're in there cursing up a storm, but it's internally driven. Who cares? Let them do it. It'll get them out of it.
But
on
the
the other
words
hand,
used
their
wasn't
friends need
uncomfortable,
to
it was
learn
unsafe.
yeah. And there's a difference between knowing when it's unsafe and knowing when it's not. And it's a fine line to draw sometime. And like the adrenaline dump, you've got to give them enough time to come down before you can find out what the problem is.
Mirren?
So I think a lot of it is the context thereof. If you're throwing stuff, but you're by yourself, deliberately place yourself away from other people and you're going to get that physical energy out, is very different than if you walk back to a tent full of people or you're on the sidelines and you've got a lot of people around you. And like, that's where the safety thing comes into it for me. One is I'm taking myself over here to deal with my shit the way I need to deal with it. And the other is I have lost control in a situation where I shouldn't have. But to Leodin's point of would this be brought to a marshal or not, like that's sort of a gray area. Like if you're not on the field actively fighting, there's no official designation for whose job it is to make sure that your behavior is safe. Like the marshals are in charge of what you're doing when you're competing, but when you're off the field, does that fall to royalty? Like that's a lot of micromanagement that you don't necessarily have time for or the ability to do. Does that fall to your unit commander? Like there's sort of this gray area where we don't have an official way of dealing with somebody who might frequently make people feel unsafe when they're not actively on the field. So that might be something that we need to address at some point.
That's true. And there could be a Venn diagram of that, right? Like it can be that, you know, like the unit commander and like if they have a peer, if they like spouse, very good friend, household member, head of house, maybe it is the royals, whoever, like it could be more than one person who is told and needs to address it. But
I mean, I'd like something a bit more official, like if somebody's making people feel physically unsafe, then
well, that's the
making it
seneschal then.
like social problem as opposed to safety problem, right?
Yeah, I mean, sorry, Mercedes, but I think if people are being made to feel unsafe on the regular by somebody's behavior when they come off the field, that's that probably would fall under the realm of seneschal if it's something that needs to be officially handled.
Well, speaking of the seneschal, what I would like to see with something like that. So, say you have, Fencer X who regularly does things like explodes when he loses a bout, they lose a bout, and rips his mask off and throws it across the field, storms off, and they do this, maybe not every time, but enough to make people go, this is starting to freak me out. This should be sent to both the marshal in charge, and the local seneschal, maybe the autocrat of the event, just to start a paper trail. This is one of the big things that I had a problem with, both as Kingdom Rapier Marshal and as Kingdom Seneschal, is that people would say, "Oh, they've done it again." I've seen this problem with this person over and over for years, and you say, "Okay, well, let me go through my files," and there's nothing in the files because nobody has ever sat down and said, I know it seems like a small thing, but they came off the field at Penzic and were screaming at everyone, and they threw their mask and it almost hit somebody, and it just, nobody was actually hurt, but at the same time, everyone in the tent cringed, and you could see people feeling really unsure about how to handle this. And so I would say that starting a paper trail sooner rather than later is the way to handle this, so that in 2 or 3 years, when it escalates to the point where they've thrown their shield in the finals of Kings and Queens and it lands at the Queen's feet, which is a thing that actually happened, we can say, hey, this is like the 8th time they've done something stupid. We're gonna escalate this all the way to the end. But so many times, what happens is you go, nobody reported that? Really? No one? And you have an empty file.
So it sounds like you're a good person for this conversation since you have had both jobs. So it sounds like what you're saying is maybe both, like
yes,
marshal
yes,
and seneschal, both paths, and
yes.
And if our officers collaborate the way they're sort of designed to, then things can happen.
And there was more than one situation where a complaint was made to one officer where I collaborated with another Kingdom officer or a local officer that wasn't a seneschal to handle a problem that went across disciplines, really. If somebody was an archer who misbehaved on the archery field, which is another thing that happened, the archery marshal was informed, and then it escalated to the Kingdom seneschal, and eventually a person was R&D'd because of something that they did on the archery field. So something that can start with one discipline's marshalate can absolutely go the seneschal, but we need, you know, we need the paperwork. Please, for God's sake, anyone can make a complaint. If anyone feels unsafe, if anyone feels that there is a problem with a person that needs to be addressed by, and they don't know who, go to any marshal, go to seneschals, go to autocrats. You know, we should be and must be here for people. And if you don't get the answer that you want, go above them. This is my public address system.
No, but I think there's also something to be said for people not wanting to report because they're afraid of repercussions, whether it's social repercussions or or like actual repercussions. Like I know that there were times when stuff has happened to me and I've been like, well, that person is like the king of Artemisia. It was Atenvelt. That guy's the king of Atenvelt. So I'm just not gonna, I'm gonna complain to my friends and otherwise not say anything because I already know that he's a dick, right?
Yeah, or that person is twice my size.
Yeah.
And I mean, there was one situation where I had to speak as seneschal to somebody who was quite literally twice my size. And I just went around to all the knights on site and I said, could you stand like 5 feet away and just make sure that there is a circle of protection?
Yeah.
So yeah, I get that retaliation is a thing.
Isabel had a topic change. If there's nothing, if anyone else wants to talk about this topic before we move on. But thank you. This has been like that was a really important
Yeah, there's something
discussion.
in chat from Jordan saying that he's asking, do large people and males getting angry frighten people more than smaller people or females displaying the same signs of anger? I know I have this prejudice. My answer is yes. I think that people are more intimidated by large males because they're more physically threatening and because sometimes people will dismiss women as she's just being hysterical.
Or isn't that adorable?
Yeah,
I know, right?
Real adorable.
Yeah.
Always fear the smaller women just a little bit. A healthy dose of fear for a small, angry woman is not a bad thing.
Yeah, just ask Natalia and Ree.
Yeah.
Or Keelan.
I'm not scary.
Don't piss off Ree. She'll put your tent in the road.
Yeah, Adam's just behind my screen going, I did the look away thing.
I asked that just so that we're all aware that we have our own innate responses to this. And we shouldn't assume that because we feel something that everybody else feels exactly the same way.
But it does make sense that you're going to be more scared of a large angry man than a small angry woman or man. Like it's just because our brains are designed to go, that is large and a threat. In a way
sure,
that
but we shouldn't escalate that to needs addressing if the smaller person in the same situation does not need to be addressed.
No, I think both would need to be addressed, but I do also feel that if someone is going to make others feel physically unsafe, I hate to say there's a double standard, but there just kind of is, because of the way lizard brains work. It's just,
it does exist. Oh, sorry.
It may affect the whether you're reluctant or not to deal with this person. You know,
Yeah.
as a marshal, for instance, maybe as a small person, you don't want to deal with a large male.
Yeah, like, and some of that does come naturally to people because I have had my toe stepped on by Griff, and it shattered a toenail and broke some things. A couple years later, I had my toe stepped on, the same one, by Sorsha, and that didn't do anything. Wearing the same footwear, I'll add, because Griff likes to give me shit for having worn those like Vibram shoes. But I can tell you, there is a very different measurable physical response to both of those things, and that does form biases for people. And yeah, it does need to be a part of the conversation. Like, I hate to say it is a double standard, but like, it is definitely measurable that it was worse to be stepped on by Griff.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, look, I'm not a person that likes double standards, but I just don't like. There are some of them that I'm like, I mean, if people feel threatened by a larger person than more threatened by a larger person than they do by a smaller person, it's still that people are feeling threatened. You know, so ultimately it doesn't matter the size of the person that's making them feel threatened. It's they feel unsafe. So I mean, I don't know.
I feel like we
how to
also
answer
have to look at this as what if we're the new person at their very first event and they see this? Like, if I saw someone go throw their mask and everything and people are just like, no, that's just how they are, just let them blow off steam.
Yeah.
I might be very concerned about coming back because I don't know how far, if this is a pattern or anything. So it also sends a message of, just send over the marshal and talk to them, says the marshals are willing to do something about it, not just let it be because they have power or because they have a collar or a belt or whatever.
Sean, and then I think we'll switch topics. Isabel had a question. So Sean, go ahead.
So I am not large and intimidating by anyone's standards. I'm remarkably average. However, my son, who is 14, is 5'9", 140 pounds. He is, for his age, really, large and intimidating. And he wants to be a Viking more than anything in the world. And so I see the reactions to him being very different. And he is the biggest peacemaker I've ever met. Like, when he was 5, he would get between me and his mother fighting because he doesn't like, people yelling at each other. But he still is large and kind of scary to other teenagers. So I think we, need to be aware when we are reporting things that happened, that we are aware of this double standard, that, the 5 foot, 140, 110 pound, soaking wet guy isn't as physically intimidating, but his behaviors are still just as inappropriate. If we're going to report these behaviors to establish pattern of behaviors, we need to be aware of the double standard and, actively work against it. Be like, okay, people reacted negatively to, to Brennan because he's huge and he looked angry at them. He didn't do anything. He looked angry. People felt intimidated because Brennan's scary. Okay, we need to, be aware of that. But, Keelan threw something at people and we're ignoring that because she is tiny, mighty but tiny. No, the behavior is what we need to be grading objectively. And while people's responses might be different, if we're writing people up formally, or even just documenting formally, we need to be aware of that and kind of eliminate that and look at the behavior, not the vessel that it came from, because, throwing stuff at people is never okay. Whether it hits them or not, if you're throwing at people, that's not okay. If you're just looking pissed off, you know what? Even big people can have, bitchy resting face. And we need to make sure that what we're documenting is documented correctly. So that, yes, people being afraid and feeling unsafe is important, but we can't discriminate against Brennan for being large.
No, I think Brita just said, and she's right, that it's the behavior, not how somebody looks. So if someone's just standing there looking angry, they might be angry. But if they're not doing anything, they're just looking angry. But if someone's standing there like and thrashing their arms about and throwing things and, you know, in a crowded place, to Leodin's point of it depends on where it happens, and move them away from people or get away from people. It's different. And sometimes it's sometimes it's just not being aware of where you are and how much you might be intimidating people. But again, like you're right. If someone's just standing there like, I mean, they're not actually doing anything.
For the 4 years that I lived here, I thought Wyatt hated me. That's just his face.
It's just his face. Yeah. I thought Brendan hated me before we started dating. That's just his face. So he's over there like, yeah. Isabel.
So sort of, it's on topic, but to change the topic. And I'm going to out myself. I get super anxious before melees. And I get, like, I realize there's tournament brain and all this other stuff, but how do people deal with that kind of emotional response towards going to do this thing you love? Because I do really love the fighting. But I find the anxiety can get very, very heavy to carry. And I just wondered how people deal with the different emotions that they have when they come into the space, and how they use other people or how they don't use other people to deal with that.
Remy?
Thorne had his hand up first if he wants to go first.
Sorry, I was going across my gallery screen, so I didn't see him.
No, that's fine.
He's down there. And
I'm hiding. So I haven't done a Rapier melee yet, but this past Penzik was my first Penzik on the heavy field. And I was not ready for the impact of going into the melee that first field battle. So something that helped me get through the next one was when I was going into the melee, I found out who I was fighting with, where we were going, and what the goal was. What was the objective for my specific unit? And that helped me focus enough on my job to keep my brain in the game. Because if I would have tried to just go out there and figure it out on my own, I'd be looking over 30 different directions wondering who the heck I need to hit. So that direction helped keep me in check.
Now, Remy.
Sure. Yeah, like I want to echo what Thorne says, like finding a way of anchoring yourself. And we talk about this, we talk about like trainee brains and stuff. We talk about like anchoring yourself. Maybe it's like a little speech that you tell yourself, or maybe you have like your little, how you put on your gear. Like in tournaments, I turn away from my opponent while putting my mask on, because now when I turn back, they're no longer my friend. They're my opponent that I need to defeat. Mask comes off, now they're my friend again. So you can take some of those same ideas into melee and just try to find how you can kind of anchor or center yourself. Like Thorne says, maybe just kind of know what the objective is. Maybe like, all right, this is what I need to do. It gives you something to kind of focus on. Sometimes for me, if I have a lot of anxious energy, I'll just kind of bounce around just to kind of like burn it off a little bit instead of just trying to keep it all inside, just try to let it out a little bit. I feel like that's very much a customizable thing. It's going to really kind of vary from person to person, even though that might be a bunch of overlaps. It's also, I think, not an easy thing to figure out overnight, and it might take a lot of trial and error. And this is me going back to, I think those of us that have been playing sports for like our entire lives have a bit of an advantage, because we get into those situations a lot where we have that like anxious energy before a big game or before a big match. And as a kid, when you're dealing with that, you're not actively worrying about it or thinking about how do I deal with this. You just kind of naturally do it because kids are just kind of well built to kind of mold around that stuff. Kind of like I was talking this with Kate over the weekend. Just like it's kind of like learning a language. You have someone who learned a second language as a kid when they moved over to another country. They're just like, just kind of did. It's the same idea versus being an adult. Now you're trying to learn a second language, which is how do I deal with this pre-game jitters and stuff, and it can be a little bit more challenging and daunting. So I think it's going to take some trial and error. I think people need to kind of be very forgiving of themselves while they kind of struggle through that, because it isn't a super easy thing, because it is super customizable. But yeah, like I think like a good starting point is finding like how you can center yourself for focus and stuff is a good point. And then if that works, fantastic. If not, see what other people do. They might have some other ideas and stuff.
Gwen, then Eleanor.
So definitely agreeing with Thorn, kind of building off of that. I have never been to Penzic. This was going to be my first, so I was really sorry it got postponed. But it just means I have more time to practice and get more comfortable, because my experience with Melee was a couple of practices in Atlantia, which really didn't go well. And then, I know, shock face. And then I came to Southern Region War Camp a couple of practices last year, and we were starting to work melees, and like, okay, here's how we do a line, here's how we do this. So my experience at Atlantia was not good, so I didn't want anything to do with melees because I was absolutely unhappy. It just did not turn out to be a good experience. But it was actually kind of nice to go back to the basics with Southern Region War Camp and just start completely from scratch, so I could kind of build that little bit of foundation and feel comfortable. But something that Eleanor and Kieran have both offered, and one of the best pieces of advice they've given me is they're trying to get me ready for Penzic when I finally get to go, is when you go on the field, find a buddy, stick with the buddy, do what the buddy says. Find an experienced person that you can, I hate to say hold on to, but stick close to. Because I actually, this is gonna sound really lame, a couple weeks ago when we did those almost like D&D battles, just watching it, I was feeling overwhelmed, and I was like, I'm not even fighting, I'm watching. And I'm like, yeah. And yes, I did look like that watching this. My dog can attest to this. Sorry, Poppy, you're getting involved in this. But, you know, but then we went over it, and it just made sense the more we just broke it down. So I think it's really good to just think about one step at a time, find a friend. And I'm really hoping this will work for me when I finally get to go. Find a friend, stick to them, just have the game plan, and do your best to stick with that. If it, you have to do like with Remy, says, you know, he steps away from the opponent, he puts his mask on last thing, so like, okay, now I'm in the zone. You just gotta find that thing that's gonna bring you to your calmest point, and then you can just have fun. That's the biggest thing. We're here to have fun. Yes, we wanna win, yes, we wanna kill everybody, but first and foremost, this is a game. We're playing with friends, and it's really fun to stab your friends.
Eleanor.
Okay, so Kristen, just pretend you're not hearing this, because my secret is I'm really good at taking care of other people and really bad at taking care of myself. So I find a battle buddy, because when I'm more worried about them, I'm not worried about me. So I tend to be one of those people that is introducing it's my first Penzic person to Melee, because if I'm focused on making sure that they're learning and having a good time, then I'm not stressing about myself.
So I'm gonna put myself in the queue here. For me, so I get nervous also. I get nervous every single time, but I get nervous, excited energy. And I'm just very like, I hope this goes well. I don't know if it's going to go well. I'm just so excited to be out there. And if we go down, we're going down together. Like for me, the reason I love Melee so much is the teamwork of it and the camaraderie of it. So even though I'm like, I get very nervous that I'm going to let my teammates down if I screw something up, if I hit somebody too hard, if I throw my mask, if I do, like, I get nervous about not pulling my own weight, I guess, and about things not going well. But I find my comfort in I'm doing this with my friends, and I'm doing this with people I love being around, and so I kind of calm myself by knowing that in the end we're succeeding or failing as a team, and that that turns it from I'm freaking out to I'm freaking out in the best possible way. That's me. But I also do a lot of nervous talking. So like I'll like pull Magdalena aside or Thomas aside or Remy aside and be like, I'm really nervous. I'm just gonna talk a bunch. Okay. And then we get out on the field and I'm like, fine. But sometimes I just need people who can listen to me just ramble for 10 minutes about like, I'm nervous. And then go, yes, you are. It's okay. And then I'm fine. So that's me. I have, Sean, did you still have something you wanted to say? Sean, then Mercedes, then Miran.
So I was just going to say that for me to focus on the melee when you get that nervous energy, because I think everyone does get that if you don't while you're going out. It's like the most exciting thing you can possibly do with a sword in your hand. That's still legal. But I just focus on what is the objective? What is my job? What is the objective? What is my job? And I focus on, because if you try and focus on the whole melee, it'll melt your mind, because there's, especially at Penzik, there's 1,000 people running at me. Oh my goodness, I can't kill all of them, no matter how awesome I am. So you just focus on, okay, I'm running to the first action. I'm running to this spot and I'm stopping them from doing the thing. That is my goal. And I focus on that. And then once you get into the actual fighting, then all of that, like all of those screaming voices in your head going, I'm so nervous, go away, because now I'm in the zone and I'm fighting and I'm, getting killed a lot and walking back, and that's eating a lot of my energy, or I'm actually doing well and I'm stabbing people and I'm having fun and I know what I'm doing, so long as I'm just focused on the narrow. And then as you do more melee and you move up as far as responsibility and general awesomeness goes, then you can worry about, okay, here's our strategy and here's what I have to watch for and everything else. But while you're first starting out and you're just like overwhelmed with that nervousness, focus on what is the thing in front of me? How can I do that the best I can do? And that makes it more like, okay, now I'm just fighting. And yeah, there's, infinity people in front of me, but I don't care, because I have to worry about this person on my left, this person on my right, and this person directly in front of me. And everyone else is out of my reach and I'm out of their reach, so I don't need to worry about them. I can just focus on this thing that I'm doing.
Yeah, it's almost like stage fright. Like you're nervous before you get on stage, and then once you're on stage, you're like, oh, I know this. I've practiced this a million times. So anyway, Mercedes.
So I've been doing melee for a very long time. I since the 90s. And over the years, I've had several different things I've done. But the thing that I find works for me right now is, like a lot of people have said, find an anchor. And I need to get amped up, but I need to get amped up in the right way. So I have a little iPod mini that I carry in my pouch, and I have a couple different sets of music that, if I'm doing a tourney, it's one set. If I'm doing a melee, it's a different set. And I find certain songs that trigger a certain mood that I want. So if I'm commanding a unit, I want one kind of song to come on. If I'm just going out to be the best kick-ass warrior that I can be, I have a very, very specific song that I play, and I have to change the lyrics in my head, but it's I need a hero, and I change it to I am a hero, because my whole goal to go out there is to go out there and kick their asses. And whatever goal I have, I am writing my own hero story. So finding that for me was a real plus.
What I'm hearing is we need to put together a playlist.
Yes.
Of okay, Miran.
Sorry, I'm watching Remy get attacked by Kate. So I sort of like combine a bunch of the things that have just been said. So I focus on my own particular objective, and I tell that to the people that are around me often. But for me, it's a lot of my objective very, very rarely relies on if I kill anyone at all, or whether my group succeeds as a whole and if we win. That has nothing to do with my own personal objectives. If my job is to go out there and keep a spot safe so other people can do the killing, then I win, and I meet my objective regardless of whether or not I kill anybody or the people around me kill anybody. And remembering that my objective and my task out there doesn't rely on how well I kill if I'm a murderer, or if our unit or the army actually wins that fight. I still did my job, and I was still a good soldier because my task was ABC, and that's it. Killing is not, very, very rarely on that list. It's get there, protect a spot, let other people do their job. None of those have anything to do with my own prowess in terms of my offensive ability. So I can go out there and have a bad day and say, I didn't kill a single person, but I let the 3 people next to me kill, and I did my job, and that's all that matters. And that's what keeps my stress level down.
Jordan.
I too have been doing this for close to 30 years. And melee's always been far more fun for me than single fighting or tourney fighting. But I do find it takes, for me at least, it takes a different type of focus. When I'm fighting in a list, I focus on the person in front of me. And that's all that really matters. When I'm on the melee field, I've tried to switch to peripheral vision so that I see as much of the field as possible. And then I let the goal of the melee, whatever it may be, sort of lead me around the field to wherever looks like the spot I need to be in. And if I can sort of see everybody at once, that's when I really get in the zone. And I've done things that I would never have imagined I could do. And I've also gotten killed without ever realizing I was in any danger whatsoever, and both of them are equally fun.
Isabel, do you feel like you have good answers? Do you have any follow-ups?
There was a follow-up question. What was it? Yeah, for me, just to give some more about my thing, is that I have in my past been a professional improviser, and so I totally understand. Like, and the whole time I was on stage for almost every week for 3 or 4 years, and every time I had stage fright, and I was used to that. Like, I knew that once I got on stage, I would feel better. And I'm still working on feeling that in fencing. Like, I know that once I get there, once I start, it's all good. But it's the getting over my emotions that are very, like I said, heavy on me, that I'm still struggling with, even 4 years. This would have been my 5th Pensic. My 4th year of fencing. Yeah, so I really appreciate all the ideas and the things. And yeah, it's a struggle that I have, and I really, I know other people deal with it, and how they deal with it is great to hear.
So does distraction help you at all? Because I know with me, that's why I need to just blab at people, is that distracts my mind from getting into a dangerous loop.
Yeah, distraction helps, and I've been meaning to try like music and stuff, but I have never gotten around to it. The thing for me is also the getting to the field. Like, sometimes it's less about once I'm there, once I'm actually under the tent, things are good and stuff. It's the getting from my tent to the tent. and getting to the point where I see the stage in front of me. And so there's a lot of great ideas there to help me with that. So thanks.
Remy.
Yeah, one thing I just want to kind of add on, and we definitely touched on this. A bunch of people kind of touched on this in different ways. Is kind of figuring out where that anxiety is coming from. Is it like just nervous energy because you're just really excited and you're like a puppy dog and just like don't know how to burn off that energy before the get-go? Or is it like you're afraid you're going to let your friends down or your team down and stuff? Like that's the one that I suffer the most from with Melee, as like a mod of the East who is known for melee prowess and stuff. Sometimes that can weigh a little heavily in terms of like people expecting me to kind of carry a bit of a load when I'm on the field and stuff. And I need to realize that like, yep, maybe some days I'm going to be Babe Ruth, other days I'm going to be Bill Buckner out there and just not do as well as I'm kind of hoping for, what people kind of expect and stuff. And that kind of goes into being able to kind of forgive yourself and just kind of not worry about what other people think of you, which is easier said than done, of course, and stuff, but just kind of knowing where the source of that anxiety is coming from. Is it like concern? Is it excitement? Is it like a third option that maybe I'm not thinking about and stuff? Can be a good starting point for figuring out kind of like where to go from there and working through it.
Well, for me, it's definitely I mean, I'm not a mod of the East by any stretch of the imagination, but I don't want to let my friends down. I don't want to let people down. And now you guys know all my secrets.
I mean, it sounds like all of us have the same secrets.
Yeah, exactly. So
your worries are also my worries. Rank and awards do not matter. Brains don't give a fuck.
Brains don't give. So like, I hear you on that. Yes, I'm jumping in, but because I've been very loud about my best form is Army, so I've got that same fear as Rapier. I'm like, I'm out there like I'm talking a big game and talking about this, and like there's gonna be one time I'm gonna make like some shitty call and people like, I thought you said, and that plays it. No one's actually gonna do that to me. No one's actually gonna be like, I thought you said, but in my brain, of course, there is someone who's gonna say that. But brains are silly.
It's going to be me or Brennan, and we're going to be making fun of you.
I mean, it could be both of you. Why would it just be you or Brennan? Sorry, Leodin.
No, it's okay. What I was going to say is that this mostly applies to Penzic and not really so much other events because of just the nature of Penzic. Isabel, did you see that photo I posted on Facebook earlier this week of my memory? The one that had Mercedes in it?
yes, it's a beautiful photo.
Thank you. I took that photo because that photo is what I like to do on the field. I get up there early. Like you saw, there was like 5 people on that whole field. Like I get up there early when it's still quiet and there's nobody in the tent and I could just walk around, and I usually bring my food up with me so I can sit and eat it. So I could just sit there and think about what I need to do. Like I'll sit there literally with my notes about like, okay, here's what we're doing for this battle, and I'll eat my food. And so I'm thinking about what I need to do, and I'm thinking about where my head needs to be in the place that my head needs to be. So just being there pulls me in so much quicker, so I can just get my head focused. And I have found that, in the years since I have started doing that, it has made my anxiety better. And it has quieted the boss music,
Yeah, there is something about just being there ready to go that will either hype you up or bring you down, depending on who you are. And also for me, depending on the day. So, Thora.
Oh yeah, no, that was basically, so would you say that most of your anxiety is specifically heading towards, like, is it just specifically melee at Penzic or melee in general or any kind of fencing? And no judgment, I'm a ball of everything. So.
I have, last Pensic was really hard for me anxiety-wise. So that's where this is really coming from. I have had some tournament anxiety, but I tend to be able to deal with it very easily by crying a little bit and then having Ray pat me on the head. That seems to work for my tournament anxiety. But I do find that the anxiety at Pensic and Melee, for Pensic in general, or for Pensic in specific, but Melee in general, will actually keep me off the field. Actually be so heavy that I want to not be there until I can actually get into the fight. And so, I don't want that. I want
No, I understand that. All right, so I have like the opposite, where like tournaments stress me out to the point where my stomach will be in knots, and then I'll spend hours in the car saying, "Why am I going here?" Pensic Melee it's a kind of a bigger animal, and I have a little bit of that, but I find that like there's so many people there. And I don't know if this is gonna help you or not, but I find like I have so many people that I'm like, nobody cares if I'm here or not. So I'm just gonna like hide it in the corner and like hang out, and I'll find like 3 or 4 friends that I'm super cool with, and then you just stick to them like white on rice. And at that point, you're just hanging out. There just happens to be swords there, and you might be running every once in a while. And if you keep it at that level of I'm hanging out with my friends and it's hot and there's swords and there's running and I have 50 dudes bearing down on me, I don't want to die because it's far walking to go sit down. Keep that in your mind, and I swear you won't even be thinking about it. It's just gonna be so hot and tired, and then later on you'll be like, I had fun, I think. And just keep it at that level. And then just don't think about like anything else. Nobody cares about like winning or losing. I mean, we all know we do. We're gamer nerds here, but just like keep it at that low level. I'm hanging out with my friends and there's swords, and I just happen to be outside and there's going to be running involved.
I 100% also wanted to get good because I hated trying to run back to res and back.
Yeah.
Like
it's far. It's hot.
I do not have that kind of cardio in me. So once I was like, but if I get better at this, I don't have to run as much, was a big motivator.
I just don't
find what works. You find what works.
So like next time there's a melee, find me and we're gonna hang out together. There's gonna be swords and I'm lazy, so it'll be good.
I adore you.
I just fight near the res point.
I mean,
he's a rock star. I like him.
Battle buddies.
It's brilliant.
Large scale melees don't generally make me very nervous, but especially as I've done more commanding, I do tend to keep myself more busy. And that's, if I think about what's going to happen, it doesn't help. And that's the way I'm in tournaments. I still haven't figured out tournaments. Tournaments are awful and horrible. But I'm definitely, like Keelan was saying, I'm always, just talking, being distracted. So generally large scale melees don't, but before champs last year, what did I do? I got up, I made a whole bag full of sandwiches so I could throw that in someone's face or my face. Before I went out there, I brought a ton of Gatorades in case I needed to throw it at anybody. I walked around, I talked to people. If I started thinking about it, that's not helpful. And then in Melee, though, usually once there's a lay on, it's not a problem for me. Tournaments, I haven't figured out how to flip that switch. But in Melee, if I can keep myself from getting worked up beforehand, then generally I'm pretty okay.
Just don't do what I did.
Which thing?
To stop myself from thinking, when I was learning early on, I used to get myself hyped up on freaking energy drinks like Monster and Rockstar and all of that shit, so it would turn my conscious brain off, and I was simply reacting because my brain was going so fast I couldn't overthink shit for once. That was how I did it early on. No good comes from that. Specifically, adrenal fatigue eventually comes from that.
Good to know. Erin raised her hand.
So I know for me, like I'm stupid levels of empathic at times, and Penzic especially, like I just soak up everybody else's feelings and then it falls out of my face a lot. But going into Melee, a lot of what helps me for that, and even the tournaments that I've been in there, it's if I have people around me whose energy I know I can absorb that isn't going to overwhelm me, like I'll get there on time. I know that the handsome boys are going to be excited and ready to go in their own weird, chill sort of way. So I know I can hang out with them and talk with them because that's the type of energy that'll get me into the right mindset. And then I can project that out to the people that need it, that I'm working with, who are freaking out more than I am. And then everything sort of trickles downhill in a really positive way. But I know that sometimes I just hit a point where everything just soaked up too much and then it just needs to fall out of my face and then I'm good. So recognizing where I'm getting my energy from and how I can place myself in a spot that is a productive way of dealing with things as opposed to an overwhelming way that makes everything bad is really good for me.
So you touched on something that's interesting to note. It's like I find that if I have an immediate tiny purpose, I'm not talking like my objective on the Melee field. I mean like if I know that Thora is going to be on the field freaking out, I can be like, I have to go to the field and make sure Thora is not freaking out, and that'll make me not freak out because I have a reason to not freak out, and my reason is if I freak out, she's going to freak out more, and I should just be there to put my arm around her and be like, we're going to be awesome, it's going to be great, we're going to do this, right? You know,
Yeah.
and so having an interpersonal purpose is also helpful to calm my weasels.
Yeah, I get given a lot of the baby fencers that the handsome boys fight with, and I kind of corral them and I kind of tell them, because a lot of them have only done Melee once or twice and never at the scale of Penzic. So I'm like, all right, as the semi-experienced person here, how did that happen? Let me give you some advice on how you can process this so that you're still having fun, even if you're looking at all of the people around you with fancy medallions on and saying, I can't contribute to this. What do? I'm too tiny. I'm too tiny.
So I'm actually going to change topics just a little bit because one of the things that I've been thinking about is like, what are some things that you like, because we're talking about like things that you can do to mitigate your own nerves, but what can you do when going back to the emotional responses? I'm actually going to tell one of Brennan's stories because it's the most appropriate to what I'm trying to ask. As he's just over there like, oh, what are you even doing? So when he was still a wayward squire, as he will describe himself, you know, he was about to get into an argument over something on the field, and he had a squire chain on over his lamellar, and he was about to just be like scream in this guy's face, and he tells the story as he felt the chain slide across his lamellar, thought about his knight, and so he thought about Lucan and Yana, his knight and his rose, and went, I'm going to take a walk, or whatever the words were that he said. I don't remember. Do you remember what they were? You even listening to me? He's not listening to me. So like that's a thing that he was able to, and then from then on, like he wore a very thin Byzantine squire's chain that Martin actually now has. It's not actually a squire's chain. It's a jewelry grade thing, but like I got it for him to be like, hey, you know, this might be a way that you can, he's like, I need to have my squire's chain at work, but how can I do that? I'm like, here you go. So like a thing that sort of grounds and reminds you, if I lose my cool in this really, in a way that's going to draw attention or I'm going to hurt somebody, or I'm going to make someone feel afraid, is there a physical object or a mantra or something that you have that can keep you grounded when you feel like you're escalating?
I was like, so nobody was speaking, so I thought I'd just jump in. For me, it's not a physical thing. It's just the people. Like, I know that people have my back to complain to. Like, I know that sounds weird, but like, if something happens, I don't need I can hold myself because I know that there are people that are standing behind me that will listen to me, even like will listen to me, tell me I'm right or wrong, and be there for me. And so for me, like that's one of the joys of having brain weasels, is that at least every once in a while they tell me, yeah, brain weasels, is they tell me, oh, don't deal with that now because that would be bad. Deal with it later. So for me, it's not a physical thing. It's a mental. It's at least a small bonus of the mental things that I have.
So just for me, I wear several things on my belt, right? So I've got my cadet scarf, I've got my toad scarf, I've got my handsome Calaver's cord, and usually the Queen's favor, I've never taken Matilda's favor off my belt. So like that reminds me of the people that I'm trying to not embarrass, or the people that I do this for and with, and that's a way to keep me from like I definitely don't want to embarrass these people, and and like I always have something VDK on me, so that's Brennan and that's my house, so for me it's having these physical symbols of the people and the ideals that I hold to be dear and important. So Remy, sorry.
Yeah, so I kind of look at it slightly differently because I don't like to wear a bunch of regalia, so I don't have that physical response, but I think that's a really cool idea and stuff. For me, I like what pops into my head is it's like sportsmanship, and to me that is a virtue. We could probably think of a more historical term, maybe it's like courtesy or whatever we want to think about, but like for me, being a good sport is very paramount. That's something that just kind of been drilled into me playing baseball, football, hockey since I was like 5 years old and stuff. So if I catch myself getting to a point where I feel like I might become unsportsmanlike, that's when I know when to break off, or at least I can get myself to kind of like break out of that cycle and stuff. So for me, it's a little bit more of a personal virtue that like helps me keep me in line when I need to. But yeah, that's how I do it for me anyways, is I kind of think about, I want to keep my reputation of being a good sport and not being a hothead, and what can I do to keep that as long as I can.
Yeah, and sometimes it is like the positions that we hold, right? So like sometimes my mantra is remember you're a rose, right? Like so I have my own thing I say to myself as well. Thorin, then Magdalena or effing, whichever one of you is talking, or both of you, and then Mercedes. And then Jordan, and then Leodin.
Leodin's before me.
Then Leodin, then Jordan. I didn't see who raised first, sorry.
So going back to having something personal, like when I fight, there's a couple of favors I keep on my belt. Always. The first one I put on is one that my ex made when we were still together that represented her and my son. I still wear it because I'm still trying to be the best dad that I can be to him. Because when I was growing up, my dad was an abusive POS who thought the only way to solve everything was if you were of use to him, he would smile. If he were a threat, he would yell, scream, rant, and rave, and think he was going to get his way. So anytime I get the inkling of I'm getting angry, I want to either rip your head off or something to that effect, I go, this is not the example I want to set for my son. I'm going for a walk. And the other part is, if I'm in a fight, my job on the field is to have fun and make sure whoever I'm trying to hit is having fun too. If one of those isn't happening, there needs to be a conversation. Not a screaming match, a conversation.
Effingham, Mercedes, Leodin, Jordan.
So for me, because I don't have the kind of brain that lets me go and find a physical object like that, I tend to place a great deal of importance on knowing exactly who you can say the most batshit crazy absurd things to, that is your safe person to just be like, to roll over to somebody, even if it's somebody you love, and be like, you know, there's this person, I want to rip off their head, shit down their neck, and then like punt it like a volleyball with my foot. And they know that like, okay, you're angry, but like knowing that that's a person you can say shit like that to, or even when you have like somebody else who's, you know, you're just having the safe person to vent your spleen to, when it comes to stuff like that is key. Not that I've ever been on the phone with Keelan, you know, telling her exactly how pissed off I was at certain things. Never. And, you know, but having that sort of a support network in place and knowing it ahead of time, that was actually one of the, when I was Keelan's Rapier champion, I was struggling with some shit before I got to know her better, and I was freaking out over basically every little thing. And Isabel Chamberlain actually was like, bro, you need to find the people who you can say some really obnoxious things to, and they're not going to just screenshot it and post it online to make fun of you. You need to find people who actually like will let you vent and just let you do that, and you can get all of that stuff out and then like collect yourself and not then explode on people online as much, which yeah, I'm slightly better now.
You're a lot better now. But you also weren't that bad back then, if I recall correctly. Mercedes.
So over the years, having several different jobs in the SCA, I joke that I should have my laurel in diplomacy because I've had to learn how to not say things. And one of the things that I keep saying to myself is, be the duck. Be the duck. Swim gracefully on top while paddling madly underneath where only a few people can see. And when I stepped down as Kingdom Seneschal, one of the things I did was I gave token rings to the 3 people who were there for me, who would listen, because that was so important. Fraser, who heard absolutely everything, and Alice, who did so much for me, and my mom, who knows all the secrets of the kingdom. And then after that, my mantra became, you're a motherfucking peer of the East, or you're a motherfucking master of defense, or you're a motherfucking tiger of the East. It let me kind of get that extra mile out of myself. If I was running and I had a quarter of a mile left to go, it was, you can do this, you're a motherfucking tiger of the East. If somebody was in front of me that I wanted to absolutely murder, I say to myself, you got this, you're a motherfucking tiger of the East. You're better than this. So having that one thing that makes me be both good and bad helps a lot.
Thank you. And that's also, yeah, like just remembering what who you are represents, and like what the things you have earned represent as well. Leodin.
So jumping off of that, actually, I don't, much like Effingham, I don't really have a physical thing that I go to. I have spent a long time cultivating a reputation of someone who, when shit goes wrong, I go into cool mode and I fix it. I am a person that I may not be able to do it, but I know who to go to, or I know what to get done, and I can triage. And if I am constantly losing my cool publicly, I'm not going to be trusted as that person anymore. Like, as a stage manager, as a person who has worked in a call center for a long time and done escalated calls, as a person who was Vox Regis, as a person who has just been around and done a lot of logistical stuff. I can't be that person that I know I can be and be the effectiveness that I can be if people don't trust me to do it. And so for me, it's not so much a physical thing. It is just me. I don't want to disappoint that. I don't want to disappoint people's thought about what I can do and if I'm capable of doing it. So that's me.
Jordan?
Well, you all must be really good examples for me, because I thought I would never admit this. But my way of dealing with it is completely different from everybody else's. I just summon up my own innate sense of superiority and form noblesse oblige to the little people that are having problems with me, and smile and try to without being too patronizing, say something, and then I will go off on my own and deal with it later. So that's how I get over it. But yeah, it's kind of embarrassing, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, everyone has their ways, right? And if it works, right? Miriam.
So I got involved in the SCA and got connected to various groups really, really quickly. I came in with a group of friends who showed me the ropes, and then it all just sort of ballooned from there. And I started out with the reputations of my friends who are so much cooler and so much more involved than I am. I don't want to make them look bad. So that relationship and my behavior reflecting on everybody else became super important to me well before I had the physical markers that came with those. So my cadet scarf and my VDK medallion and the little trinkets that hang off of it could, like, yes, those are the physical representations of how that works. But in my head, it's, I'm not a hothead in public. I wait until I can vent to the safe people, because I don't want any of the people who have their names connected to me and made the choice to make that a public statement. I don't want them to have to deal with the fallout of me running my mouth.
That's a lesson I could do to learn, but you know, working on it, work in progress or something. Does anyone have anything else on this subject? Anything else they want to ask? Anything else they want to say about anything having to do with emotions or nerves or experience we might have had that have to do with any of these?
I always
No,
think it's much better to be a good example than to be a horrible warning or a person whose name is associated with some new rule.
I mean, it depends on the rule.
I was going to say, yeah, I've got like 2 of those under my belt now.
But yeah. I the SCA in general is so and rightly so, is so focused on how we behave, on specifically on chivalric behavior and pure light qualities and having honor, and that's one of the things that many of us love about it. And so, but we're all also humans, and we are flawed, and so we don't always show our better nature. Sometimes we show our worst nature, and being aware and saying I'm sorry and being forgiving, I believe are the kind of hallmarks of grace that we need to keep in the forefront when any of the stuff we're talking about happens. I threw my mask when to apologize. I blew up at the marshal. I was marshaling and I blew up at a person who really didn't. The punishment did not fit the crime. Just making sure that we can come back later and have the right and have an appropriate amount of grace, whether you are the aggrieved or the other party. Is there an opposite of aggrieved?
There's actually like one of those folksy sayings that that the Midwest loves so much that I feel like is applicable to that. Two things can be true at the same time. Everyone deserves a path to redemption, and no victim needs to accept their attacker's apology. Those can both be true at the same time. Doesn't make anything easy, but yeah, people are hard and shit like that's fucked up, but those things can be very true. And sometimes people can legitimately redeem themselves, and sometimes they can just keep digging.
That's a good point. That's a good point. So if we don't have anything else, if no one has anything else on tonight's topic, if anyone just wants to hang out and chat, that's cool. If we want to close this down, we can do that too. Next week is the repetitive injury discussion, so that one should be fun. Or injurious. Someone started talking and I didn't mean to talk over it. There's a slight delay.
Yeah, just a random thought that I had regarding one thing that was mentioned way earlier. It's about when people say they got like ganged up by people who were just like checking if you're okay or not. I think one way to go about that is for the person who checks on the first, initially on the person to see if they're okay or not, or if they need any assistance, is to hang around and intercept people coming over and say, hey, I checked already, they're fine.
Yeah, and I think for many people, if they're in any sort of student teacher or peer relationship, whether they are the peer or are the student, that can be sort of a built-in, but it's not always, because that person might not be there or whatever. But it is good to always have a person that that you can have somebody get. So like if I'm on the field and something, whether it's just that I'm angry and can't deal with it, or like I'm hyperventilating, or I'm having an asthma attack or whatever, if it's bad enough that I need somebody, I know who my safe people are. So when someone goes, do you need anything? I can say, get Brennan, get Thomas, get like any person who I'm like, I know this person is going to take care of me because I can't take care of myself right now.
Not it.
Yes, you are. Shut up.
Not it.
Brennan, it's either you or it's Rapier Brennan. So
we can sometimes tag in Ivan.
We can absolutely tag in Ivan. Absolutely can tag in Ivan.
Courtney.
And I mean there are other people too, obviously, but first things that are going to come to my mind are going to be because Brennan might be on the Rapier field with me. I could tag in. I can absolutely Llewellyn in a heartbeat. Ray. There are people who I know are going to be on the field or around the field that either are going to take care of me or are going to know how to find the people who are better equipped. And if everyone even if you're not in a peer relationship or any other kind of relationship, having a person who you can like designating your emergency contact, even in your own head, is a good thing to kind of do, so that when someone says, do you need something, you go, right, I need Remy, right? Like you have that person already built in. So in case of court injury meltdown, yeah, just in case I need. And of course, I know I say this literally every week on every single topic, but communication, I really feel like is the most important thing in any of these situations. Sometimes you can't communicate. Like that's friggin' real when we're talking about this stuff. Night, Jordan. Like sometimes you're too angry, you are actually injured, you're like just crying you're ugly crying and everything's gonna be like, I can't, you know, like sometimes you just can't communicate. But even communicating upfront with someone who like can communicate for you, like there's always a path to better care, better interpersonal, through using your words when you are calm enough and of presence of mind to do so. Have the presence of mind to do so. I think it's my Gen X showing.